Welcome to Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'm Greg Bluestein here with Patricia Murphy. Hey, Patricia.
Hey, Greg.
Well, it was one of the nastiest political races in recent Georgia history. For months, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones was the Republican frontrunner for governor. He had Donald Trump's endorsement. Then in the final days of the runoff, Governor Kemp backed him too. But it wasn't enough. Rick Jackson spent more than $108 million of his own money to defeat the lieutenant governor. Most of Georgia's Republican establishment quickly rallied behind Rick Jackson. Burt Jones has not yet. The lieutenant governor has largely stayed quiet since the runoff, and questions are already swirling about what comes next for one of Georgia's most powerful Republicans. Today, Burt Jones joins us for his first interview since his defeat. Hey, Lieutenant Governor.
Hey, Greg. How you doing, Patricia? Good to see you.
Great to see you.
Yeah, as always. Last time I saw Patricia, I was hugging her, getting a film of her endorsing me on in Paulding County. But she was like, "No, this is not real. This is fake news."
Something tells me that was not an
fake news.
Yeah.
I also saw you on election night as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, but thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be here.
So it's been a few weeks since the runoff defeat. How are you doing? What's going on with you right now?
Doing well. Had a little vacation with the wife and kids, and then just have been back in my office at work, doing, just regular jobs at hand, catching up on a lot of things, getting a lot of honey-do list done around the house right now. Cleaned the garage out this weekend. It was a lot of fun. I needed your help on that, Greg. But I really have not been paying much attention to the political world right now, but I think everything's kind of in a lull. I think everybody was glad to get the primaries behind them on both sides. And, look, I'm just enjoying life right now. Went out water skiing this past weekend, played on the lake a little bit. So, you don't realize how much idle time you can have in a day until you get off a campaign trail.
Yeah. I talked to Jason Carter about that after his campaign. We know it was minute by minute by minute. I think he probably had like 5-minute blocks scheduled for you. Sure. And suddenly you have a wide open agenda. Yeah,
it really is amazing how when you're in the throes of a campaign, how literally every hour of your day, is set for either making phone calls, going to visit, or going to, whatever meet and greets, fundraisers, doing radio shows, doing TV shows, whatever it might be. Literally, you're on the go. Even when you have downtime, you really don't have downtime because you're thinking about all the things that need to get done on the campaign and everything. So it is quite amazing how much you do put yourself through when you're running a statewide race. I tell people all the time, look, a statewide race is a grind like no other, and it's one that you can't explain it to people. The only way you can know exactly about it is, being in the throes of it. And, I've run 2 statewide races now as lieutenant governor and then for this governor's race. And it's a lot.
So you launched your campaign almost exactly a year ago to the day, last July.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I went back and looked at some clips.
Right.
And you laid out what you'd done as lieutenant governor, and you said this is just the beginning of what we can do together. Looking back on the campaign, what do you see as what y'all did right? What are you pleased with looking back?
Look, you can always Monday morning quarterback in any situation. Obviously, there are a lot of things we did right. There's a lot of things I'd like to, do over, obviously. But at the end of the day, we went around the state, basically talking about, the record we had as lieutenant governor, and also my time in the Senate, being a pretty conservative legislature, and also talked about the successes that the state has had, under Republican leadership, through Brian Kemp and Nathan Deal before that. That was a message that I thought would resonate pretty well, and I think it did resonate well with a lot of people. We had a lot of strong supporters throughout the state. Obviously in the primary race, we won, I think, almost 130 counties out of 159. And then obviously in the runoff didn't do as well, but the turnout was a lot lower, obviously. So, but at the end of the day, I don't know how I don't know how you combat against, I think everybody says there's about 108 million, that it really, our calculations show that it's probably more closer to 200 million that was spent against us when you talk about TV, when you talk about mailers, when you talk about, all the different, people involved around the state. So, that's a real headwind. And I don't care who you are. It's a headwind, and obviously we spent probably $40 million, a little north of that. And this was a race that I thought could be won before Mr. Jackson got in the race. I felt like that race could be won for about 8 or 10 million, and it was on track to do that, until he got in the race. And then obviously it just blew a hole in that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned, and we get the $108 million from his campaign finance reports, but as you mentioned, it doesn't include all the outside spending, all the dark money groups that might have backed his campaign. Certainly there is that Georgians for Integrity shadow.
Where are they now? I hadn't seen them lately.
We haven't
Georgians
seen
for
them
Integrity.
often.
Integrity, yeah. They've disappeared all of a sudden.
Your allies, and I think you yourself have blamed Rick Jackson for those ads. He has said he had nothing to do with them. When you started seeing those ads, though, and there was a lot going through your mind, I know that folks around you thought any number of people could have been behind those before Rick Jackson got in the race. But was that a signal to you that someone's gunning for you that could actually enter the race?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when it got above, I think when it went above $5 million in spend on the negative ads, that's when I started saying, no, this is somebody testing the waters here, and I knew it wasn't any of the candidates that were currently in the race. So I knew it was going to be somebody who was looking at it, and obviously. It became pretty clear when Jackson came out that who was behind it. I don't think you can have the same Ohio lawyer who set up LLC for him in Alabama for one company and then set up this same Georgians for Integrity. There was a lot of people who I don't, who else would it have been, obviously. And so, that's one thing that they can deny it if they want to, but we've seen a similar playbook used by not just, him, but some of the people that he has around him, that is running his campaign now. I mean, that they did it to David Schaefer in a big way back in 2018. And they went after Josh McCoon when he was in the state Senate, with buying mailers. So it's not if it wasn't him, it was somebody who really tried to emulate what he had done in the past with other candidates.
When he did get into the race, I was at his kickoff rally. He made it almost entirely about you, had a lot to say about you, very negative, said that you were lazy, that you had not worked hard enough for the nomination yet, and that he felt like you couldn't win the race. What went through your mind that day when you realized it would be him? Because Greg broke that news shortly before he announced. And then when you saw him, I mean, you'd had a relationship with him before. What was your reaction to all of that? And did you then immediately reset your campaign once you figured out, okay, this is Rick Jackson. He will have unlimited resources. How did y'all move forward then?
I really didn't think much of it, to be honest with you. And the reason why is because, in this arena, in this political arena, you're always going to have challenges coming from, right and left and everywhere in between. So I didn't think much of it, obviously, and I didn't realize that also at that moment in time that his entry into the race was going to be all about trashing me for the next 8 months. Cause I mean, look, there's 8 folks in the race at one point in time. But he spent mostly his entire time and energy, trashing me, trashing my family, trashing, basically everything that I had done, even though in the last 25 years, as far as Republican leadership is concerned, when we brag about all the things that have happened well in Georgia, whether it's being the number one state to do business, whether it's things that we've done on education initiatives or workforce development or whatever it might be, all these things that we brag about, he therefore all of a sudden was attacking me on on those things and the failures that have taken place under my tenure or whatever. So, but that tenure is the same tenure everybody likes to brag about too at the same time. So, look, and I didn't realize how personal it got. I mean, it felt, like I said, I had a little bit of a rapport with him. I wouldn't say I had a deep relationship, personal relationship with him, but I was, we had a friendly, back and forth. But it really felt personal with the attacks, whether it was in mail or TV or whatever. I could probably see those personal type attacks coming from a Brad Rathensberger or somebody like that. But for somebody who you really had no interaction with whatsoever, for him to come out just so viciously and it really helped. I think cause the low turnout that we had statewide, because it got so vicious for those who didn't know either candidate. They just didn't like it, and I think it made people stay at home and sit on their hands, both in the primary and in the runoff as well.
You said earlier there were some parts of the race you wish you could have done over. You said there was do-overs. Rick Jackson probably would not have gotten this race if you were at 50, 60% of the polls at the time he got in. I know it's hard to, go back and see how you could have gotten to that point in the polls, but was there more work you feel like now you could have done early in the campaign to sort of wall someone like Rick Jackson off?
Well, I mean, look, we were doing the work. We might not have been broadcasting it on Twitter and Facebook and all these other, or doing interviews like this. But I mean, we were going around, we were doing the county GOP meetings, we were doing meet and greets, we were doing fundraisers. And so we were doing all the things you do to prepare. Yes, if I had to do it over again, I would have been more, I would have made it more, I guess, visible to the average viewer out there, because, look, I wanted the race to be $8 to $10 million because I'm a conservative guy. I'm a guy who, if you don't have to spend $20 million, why do you want to spend $20 million? But this race ended up being a political consultant's dream, because obviously these political consultants, which I don't have much use for any of them, because all they want to do is spend your money. They love the fact of a race going negative because they make more money. The more mailers, more negative mailers you send out, they get a cut. The more negative TV ads that you do, they get a cut. And it really became an arms race, and the only real beneficiaries of it, because I think it hurt the party, quite frankly, and I think it hurt both candidates. But as far as from a perception from the general public, they're the only ones who really win, because they don't really care who wins the race. They know they're going to get their commission one way or the other. So.
A theme that I heard a lot from your supporters and friends on election night was they felt like the attacks on you were also an attack on your family. And they said, even from the stage, like, this family has been through hell and didn't deserve what they got. Your kids were in some of your campaign commercials, which I heard from voters thought that was your best commercial, was when your kids did that. Your wife was in some of your commercials. What's it like on the other side of that for this has always been a kind of a team sport with you and your family. What's it like to be on the other side of that? And can you kind of move forward now with Jackson as the nominee, knowing how it all went down?
Yeah, I mean, it really did. I'm a big boy. And I've been in this arena long enough. I can take the attacks. They don't bother me. I always tell people that, I probably, just from my days of playing sports and being dog cuss on the football field, you don't let things bother you. You move on. But yeah, when they start attacking your family, when they start attacking your father, your 81-year-old father, and your sister, and everything that they are doing as a company, it does feel, kind of like there's an alternative motive right there. But I will say this: look, I am almost certain that nobody could have withstood a $200 million attack ad campaign like I did. And number one, winning the primary, and then coming very close in the runoff. But the only reason why we were able to sustain that is because of the good reputation that we had built as a family, but also a family-run business. That had we had tentacles all over the state. And my father built a business that's 57 years old now that he started from scratch. And he has a very good reputation in the world of business and commerce that he's in, and in turn, because of the rearing that we got from both our parents, we've always conducted ourselves in a way that promotes a good reputation and way how to engage in business and everything. And I maintain the only reason why we were able to sustain all of the attacks that we had was because of the relationships that we'd built through the years, through the decades of business. Because, if all those things were true that they said about myself and my family and all this other stuff, I wouldn't have gotten almost 80% of my home county. I wouldn't have gotten, all these counties that, you wouldn't have won 130 counties out of 159 or 127 counties out of 159. Yeah. Like I said, but yes, it affects your children. It affects your wife when it's being pumped into your living room every day that your daddy is, Pablo Escobar, because quite literally when you were hearing that he lets cartel members out of jail, that he's the importer of all Chinese vapes and he's the originator of the, gaming industry, the Georgia lottery. He's, even though it was created when I think I was in 5th grade in 1992, but for some reason I got all the credit for that in his commercials.
You got a lot of course, this wasn't just one-sided though. You dished out a lot too, right? You realized pretty early
we didn't start spending any money until until they had already spent $50 million. Cause let's be honest, the $20 million for Georgia's integrity, that was the Jones, that was the Jackson campaign. That was his affiliates. I don't care what anybody says. It was his money, but, they spent $50 million on us before we ever came out and said, wait a minute now, there's the other side to this coin.
But dueling defamation lawsuits, you had millions of dollars in attack ads going after him too, right? I don't
have a defamation lawsuit. My father does, and he's not a political figure, and it's his company that they were attacking. So, I don't have a defamation. He filed one against me.
This just went into so many different areas that I had never seen these campaigns go into, right? There's usually the airwaves and the campaign trail stuff, but the battle in court, with those lawsuits, also the legislative sort of angle with allies of yours in the state capitol, pushing legislation that would make it harder for Rick Jackson to run because he took the state contracts that we've seen in so many ads and our coverage focused on as well, along with Rick Jackson's allies saying that you were trying to bottle up legislation, that they pushed. So this went into different areas that I'd never seen before.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's ridiculous to say that I was trying to bottle up legislation. You guys watched this for decades, the legislative process. There's literally hundreds of bills that get introduced every year, and some make it and some don't. And some of the House reps that were claiming that we were bottling up their legislation, they were getting other pieces of legislation, that they had authored or they supported done. And just because one piece or a couple of pieces of legislation that they were pushing didn't get done, didn't have anything to do with us trying to, strong arm them.
You think there was just an aura of tension and fear because this was such a brutal battle?
That's a great question. I'll be honest with you. I don't, in the legislative process, obviously you get, people are always concerned about their own self-interest, quite frankly. And, I think people were, anytime, there's an election going on, everybody wants to make sure they're on a winning team. And, if there's any, question about it. And obviously with the amount of money that was being spent on both sides, I think it made a lot of legislators very anxious.
Okay. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, the story of Governor Kemp's surprise endorsement of Burt Jones. Also, what's next for the lieutenant governor and why he has not yet endorsed Rick Jackson. This is Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Welcome back to Politically Georgia. Greg Bluestein here with Patricia Murphy. A reminder, if you've got a question you'd like to ask us here on Politically Georgia, you can call the hotline anytime, leave a question. We'll play it back and answer it right here on the show during our Monday mailbag segment. The number is 770-810-5297. You can also email us at politicallygeorgia@ajc.com. Producer Shaney B is standing by. Also, maybe we'll get the LG to answer one. So I can just...
Sure. I'd be happy to.
I can send you the audio.
Absolutely.
And we can record it. Okay. Let's get to the surprise of the campaign, because I woke up the Sunday morning before the runoff to the news that had broke, 1 a.m.-ish, of Donald Trump's endorsement of Mike Collins. I called one of your advisors jokingly, like, what else is coming? And I won't name her name. She's not in this room, but she joked, oh, there's no more big news coming from our campaign. Then about 6 or 7 hours later, she called saying, I apologize. I had no idea what was coming. And that was Governor Brian Kemp's endorsement of you Sunday night-ish, 2 days before the runoff. How'd that happen?
Well, and the reason why you didn't hear it from our camp is because nobody knew that Governor Kemp and I had been talking.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've been staying in communication. Obviously, I was, even though y'all don't like to admit it, I've always had a great relationship with the governor. But and also, obviously, I was calling him periodically on the campaign to, ask his advice. He'd been through two very brutal campaigns in 18 and in 22. And so you always like to talk to people who have been through the fires, so to speak. So he and I were talking on a regular basis, and I'd obviously asked for his support. He and President Trump were probably the two most popular elected officials in the state of Georgia, according to all the polling that we were getting. Obviously, and Governor Kemp is the most popular one elected official here in the state. So, anyways, so it was kind of a surprise. He called me. We talked for a second, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to do it. I want to endorse you. Let's make it. I'm going to send you the statement we're going to put out, and then we'll do something the next morning when we were at the barbershop there in Buckhead." So, So obviously, like I said, you don't always tell your staff everything that's going on. I have a good enough relationship with the governor where I can just pick up the phone and call him and vice versa. So very, very happy to have it. Obviously, probably if I'd gotten it a couple of days before, it might be on a different story, but look, you take it when you can get it. And so we were very happy to have it, and very appreciative of the governor and the first lady, putting their confidence in us. But obviously I think it was earned confidence, because I've worked side by side with him for the last 4 years. And I don't think there was one of his initiatives that we didn't get done. And I was in full support of.
So I think it would have been a lot more helpful had it come sooner. Early voting was already over by the time he endorsed you. And
Sure.
I had heard from undecided voters. They were sort of looking for, what's the way to kind of keep this going? Who's the best Republican who would sort of have the Kemp brand, the Kemp stamp? Did he tell you why he waited so long? Are you frustrated that he didn't come out sooner?
No, I'm not frustrated. Look, he was helping Derek Dooley, and he made that very clear. And he wanted to help him as much as he can. I think the more you throw endorsements out there, doesn't matter who you are. I think the more you put them out there, the less effective they can tend to be. And so he was putting a lot of his chips in the center of the table for Derek, and I totally respect that and appreciate him doing that. But obviously, yeah, early voting, it would have probably changed the minds of a lot of people who went and voted early, because if you saw in the numbers, where we struggled was in the early voting. And then on election day is when we made a big comeback, because, we won the election day vote. It just wasn't enough to get it over the finish line.
The governor, of course, wasn't your only big name endorsement. You had Donald Trump's endorsement for almost about a year before the runoff. Does your defeat show the limits of his support in places like Georgia and battleground states? I mean, what do you think that says about Donald Trump and his blessing?
Well, look, I was proud to have his endorsement, and I talked to him on numerous occasions. And he came out he came out multiple times, to express his support and everything, and I was very grateful for that. I was just very grateful to have a personal relationship with the sitting president of the United States. Yeah, not everybody can say that, and I'm also the only person who can actually say that when there was a dispute going on between the president and the governor, I'm the only person who actually had an open line of communication with both those men, You and
Lindsey Graham.
And, I guess Lindsey Graham, rest his soul. I would say that thoughts and prayers go out to Senator Graham's family there. But yeah, that's right. I mean, so, and while we all want our friends to be friends, sometimes it doesn't happen, but you don't let that affect your individual relationships with those. So I wasn't going to let, my relationship with Governor Kemp be affected by their relationship, and vice versa with the president as well.
So now that Rick Jackson has the nomination, he's gotten the support of the entire state Senate, the Republican caucus, the entire Republican caucus on the House side. You have not endorsed him yet. Why haven't you done that?
Well, I hadn't been asked.
Have y'all spoken since?
No,
since election night? Did
nobody,
he call you election night?
No, nobody's reached out, and so when people ask me why didn't you endorse, I said, well, nobody's asked me, nobody's talked to me, so I hadn't heard anything from that camp. But Greg Dolezal has asked me to help. I'm going to help him. Mike Collins has asked me to help. I'm going to help him. Brian Strickland, all folks. So, obviously, they've all called and asked, and I'll be willing to help them any way I can. But maybe they don't want it. I don't know. But like I said,
did you call him on election night to concede or congratulate him?
No. I mean, I said it in my little speech after it was over with. But no, I did not. But I will say this, after primary, from the first people I called was Chris Carr and Clark Dean. I even reached out to Ken Yiser down there in Savannah. I talked to Chris and I talked to Clark Dean. Obviously, Clark didn't engage one way or the other, and obviously Carr was supporting Jackson. I think that was obvious before the primary was over. I think that was obvious during the debate that they were already working together.
We know Rick hasn't called you yet, as you said, but obviously things are still raw, as we could tell from the first part of the interview. Right? The feelings, the sentiment is still raw. Look, Rick Jackson called Brad Raffensperger Judas, and he endorsed him. There are Senate Republicans who went all out for you, that were still fuming the day of the special session afterwards, but they signed a letter endorsing Rick Jackson. If he calls you and asks you, would you give him his endorsement? Yeah,
I mean, I'll sit down and talk to him. I mean, look, I'm not bitter. Life goes on. I don't have I've taken defeats in my life, and in personal, business, political. I mean, so it's not something where I go and pick up my ball and leave the sandbox. I mean, I'll be happy to talk to them. But I'm not going to engage when I'm not asked to be engaged.
Do you plan to vote for him?
We'll see. Obviously I'm interested in supporting and keeping Georgia Republican, running and keeping it red. And I think November is going to be a challenge. But I said that before the primary was over with. I was telling my folks that, November is going to be a challenge for all of us. And what I was telling people is, even if we come out of this primary, it's going to be a tough road ahead of us, because the Democratic Party is united, and they are midterms are always tough, especially the ones, the incumbents. Y'all know this as well as anybody, is incumbents who are in charge. And so, everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction.
Everyone needs, but you said we'll see when I asked you if you would vote for him. There's a lot of talk right now about Democratic unity and Republican unity. Do you worry that you're sort of neutrality in this race? You're not going to vote for Keisha Lance Bottoms.
I mean, here's the deal. When you want to win a race, all right, you got to make sure your foundation is secure before you can start trying to add on new portions to it. And I would say that the Republican foundation, it needs to be sewed up. So, I mean, it needs to be, you want to talk about unity. I'm just one person. There's grassroots people that feel alienated. There's GOP, people that feel alienated, because of the style race that was run. And like I said, when you have a race that runs to the gutter as quickly as possible, and it basically lamblasts everything that has been successful for the last 20 years as being corrupt or being crooked, you got to think about those people who have been in the trenches for you, working for the Republican Party. You basically alienate them too, saying, well, if we've all been a bunch of crooks, then, this is, what have we, all these things we've accomplished, what have we been working for? So I would say that, not for my ego or anything like that, but you better be reaching out to those who've been in the trenches. It's almost like a football game. You got three phases. You got offense, defense, and you got your kicking game. And when you got two teams who are very similar and it's going to be competitive, usually the ones who win are the ones who are strongest in their fundamentals and their kicking game, so to speak. Those folks in the trenches, they don't get a lot of credit. They're your snappers and kickers. They don't get a lot of credit. Teams. Yeah, they don't get a lot of credit. But those GOP and grassroots folks are the ones that probably needs to be pulled together, and then you can start working on other coalitions.
Talk a little bit more about what you see as the challenges for Republicans in November. Midterms are always tough, as you said. This looks to be especially a tough year because President Trump is polling quite lowly in Georgia right now. What is the path to victory for the Republican ticket for Jackson and Collins, who both have been so vocally supportive of the president, but that's not going to be enough in Georgia this year? What do you think's the path?
Well, I mean, look, it's always going to come down to pocketbook issues, and people are always going to, and if they're feeling the crunch, whether it's at the gas pumps or the grocery store or in mortgages and rents and all that kind of stuff, if they feel like that life is not getting more affordable to them, usually they'll take out their anger on whoever's in charge at the time, and you've seen it time and time again in midterms. So number one, you got to sew up your base. That's number one. Number two, unfortunately, it seems like everything is driven by national politics now. And you hope, in particular, that gas prices can come down to $2 where they were before the Iranian conflict broke out, and then you just got to be able to portray a message that, look, the states who are doing the best are Republican-run states: Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Texas, the Carolinas, and the states who are, quite frankly, not doing as well because they're losing population, they're losing businesses, are states like New York, Illinois, California, Virginia. The difference is clear. Those are blue-run states versus red-run states, and so you just got to hammer that message home. Because, like I said, it is unfortunate that national politics is driving not just state politics now, it's driving local politics. I mean, and that's really unfortunate because, at the local level, it really shouldn't matter about a party affiliation, especially when you're in small communities, but a lot of times people have gotten so tribal that, they're Republican, they're Democrats, and you've got these hardliners right here and hardliners on this side, and in the middle where most people are, They're just, they just want good quality of life, and they just want to feel safe in their communities and feel like they are being, having the best opportunity to live out, their dream, whatever it might be.
Lieutenant Governor, you mentioned earlier how, you just said you're just one man. But you finished first in the first round of voting. You finished narrowly second in the runoff. So you still represented a 40+% of the Republican runoff base, folks who are going to be the ones knocking on the doors and making the phone calls and activating, getting out the vote efforts and all that. If Rick Jackson does call you, let's say he hears this podcast, what would it take for him to win your endorsement? I'm assuming that something to do with the Georgians for Integrity, that anonymous shadowy group that leveled all those attacks. I'm assuming that's a part of what you might ask him.
I don't know. Look, I've always been able to sit in the room with anybody, whether friend or foe or whatever, and find some common ground with whoever I'm dealing with. And I would hope that would be my reputation. I know y'all don't always, y'all think I'm a hardline Republican guy that, just likes to bully people down at the legislature. But I think you would find that, particularly in the Senate, the folks in the minority party, look, I will tell you, on election day, I had 5 sitting Democratic senators that reached out to me and wished me luck. And the first thing they said, all the things they're saying about you, the one person who doesn't deserve the attacks that they've been under is you, because you've always been very fair with us. We don't obviously lie on political things all the time, but I find I'm easy to find common ground with just about anybody I meet with.
This is going to be the first election for Republicans without Governor Kemp at the top of the ticket in quite some time. He also had a huge ground game in 2022. What do Republicans need to do? It seems to me that's going to be a heavy lift without Kemp pulling people along. He was so popular in 22. What do they need to do to replicate that in an open seat? That's a
great question. Obviously, Governor Kemp was very popular, but let's think why he was very popular. He guided us through some very tough times right after there's probably nobody that had a tougher first 4 years as being governor, or any executive branch, quite frankly, than Governor Kemp did his first 4 years, obviously with COVID and everything else. That was the biggest thing in 22. Reason why he was so popular is so many people said, thank goodness for Governor Kemp. He kept us open. He kept the state open. So he was able, and Governor Kemp accomplished a lot of good things, but that's really what was propelling him back in 22. Number one, you don't ever know how somebody's going to react in a situation like that. And so, you just try to portray that. Once again, you talk about the successes you've had, not just under Governor Kemp, but also a Republican-led legislature, and talk about the reason why so many people are flocking to the state of Georgia, isn't because it's a bad place to live. Is not because it is a bad place to raise a family. They're coming here because they see unique qualities in the state, and you got to go try to sell that to those voters out there. I will say that was what I was selling, and because I thought it was a good positive message. But unfortunately, we had a low turnout, and the ones who turned out didn't see it that way.
So what's next for Burt Jones? I remember the first time I really sat down and talked with you. We went to a pizza place down in Jackson like a decade ago when you were sort of starting to think about running for maybe U.S. Senate at that time.
Now, see, y'all always said that. I've never
you were
even
thinking about running for something.
Nah, not really. But
it turned out that you were thinking about running for lieutenant governor.
Yeah. But that came by other circumstances. But anyways, So look, I don't ever plan these things out because you don't ever know what life's going to throw at you. And so I don't have a 5-year plan when it comes to politics, and I don't have a 5-year plan when it comes to business or anything else, because life throws you curveballs all the time. And so, did I like public service? Yeah, I enjoyed public service. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed the political process and all that kind of stuff. And when people say, "Are you going to do anything else?" I was like, "Well, you don't ever rule it out." But is it something that I'm looking at 28 to see what different people are going to be running for what offices? Because to be honest with you, if I wanted to run for something, whether it was U.S. Senate, whether it was lieutenant governor, whether it was governor, it would matter not who else was looking at it. In my opinion, It would matter if I felt comfortable doing it, if my wife felt comfortable with me doing it, and if it felt like the appropriate thing for me to do in business, for as far as family and business is concerned. So I'm not going to sit here and rule things out, but at the same time, I'll be honest with you, when you have a lot of this free time and you're able to go to the lake and enjoy yourself and with your kids and everything,
And you got 2 teenagers.
Yeah, I've got 2 teenagers. Yeah, I've got one that will be a junior this year, and she'll be off to college very soon, and then one starting the 8th grade. So he's and those teenage years, as you well know, are very important to have both parents around. And so anyways, we'll see what the future brings, but I'm not going to try to stay engaged. I'm not going to be like lobbying, trying to make, like a lot of these folks do, try to make money off the political arena, because that's just not me. I got plenty of other things and plenty of other businesses to tend to back home.
We won't see you on Fox News every other day.
Probably not. No, I couldn't get on Fox News when I was running, so I don't know why I get on there now.
Maybe Newsmax. Are we going to see you on the trail between now and November? If state senator reaches out to you, if anybody asks you to come out, would you do it?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I had a buddy of mine who's running for a House seat, and he wanted me to chair his campaign committee or something like that. And I just declined. I said, "Look, I'll help you in other ways. I don't want to." I don't want to be on a campaign chair or something like that. But I am very interested in seeing Greg Dolezal win, who's been a dear friend and a strong ally of mine. I am very interested in seeing Brian Strickland win his race, who's been a dear friend and a strong ally of mine. Tim Fleming, the same thing. These guys who I've served with, and I know them, and I know their character, and I know what kind of what kind of elected official they will be at the next level, whatever that is. Those guys, obviously, they've already reached out to me, and I said, just let me know what you need me to do. But, look, I was on the campaign trail for Herschel. Sometimes I felt like I was on the campaign more than Herschel was sometimes. And that's no knock against Herschel, because he worked his tail off. But I was out there, stumping for him just as hard as anybody. Same thing with the president. When he was running in 24, I was crisscrossing the state, and actually around the country, quite frankly, trying to help him get reelected. So, so at some point in time, like I said, I don't plan these things out. If it feels right, I do it. If it doesn't, I don't do it.
One last question before we got to go. We could still have another special session this year. So
right.
Your time as presiding over the Senate is not quite done yet, but what are you going to miss most about wielding the gavel?
I enjoyed the arena as far as the gamesmanship that goes in. And what I mean by that is that, I enjoy the negotiating, and trying to figure out ways to, create paths for whatever the situation was, to move forward. I enjoyed the people, that we served with, and even I enjoyed the personalities, because it was always fun to me just to watch how people will react to whatever, whether it was a tough situation or emotional situation or whatever it might be. I always enjoyed, the people of it,
Even Josh McLaurin.
Even Josh McLaurin, yeah, absolutely. Look, I had a great rapport. Derek Mallow, Senator Mallow, I had a great rapport with him. Freddie Powell Sims, David Lucas, and I sat next to each other in the Senate forever. And Kim Jackson, Harold Jones. I had really good rapport with all of the senators, Republican and Democrat, and very few of them, when they came to me, very few of them I turned away, and because I always tried to look for a way for each one of them to be successful, because at the end of the day, your job is to serve the people of the state. And just because a senator might represent a area of the state that's not ever going to vote for you doesn't mean that you don't try to help those folks. I never will forget David Lucas. He was trying to get some money in the budget for healthcare options for Hancock County. Mm-hmm. Well, there's not 15 Republican votes in Hancock County, but they are in dire need of healthcare assistance and help and everything else, because it is a desert when it comes to viable health options for them. And so I was able to get money in the budget for them to have a doc, and we worked with Mercer and their school of medicine there to try to get individuals to go into Hancock County and be just a medical practitioner and a PA as well. So, anyways, that's just one example of many. But yeah, that part of it I enjoyed, that part of it I enjoyed. What I didn't enjoy was when the partisan politics would just be partisan politics just for the sake of doing it. This past session, when we were talking about all these different property tax measures, especially when it was local legislation, when local legislators were pushing for either pushing for a referendum or pushing for homestead exemption increases or whatever, that became partisan. I mean, local legislation is historically, if both the House and Senate members are on board with local legislation, nobody ever challenges it. But you saw politics playing out in this special session, quite frankly, on things that should have just been about the locals who represented the area.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed it. Always good to be on, and happy to come on and give my analysis of whatever y'all want to talk about. But as you can see, I'm pretty casual.
No, it's
right
great.
now. So
I have to go give a speech to the Rotary after this. So I have to dress up.
Oh, good. Yeah, all right. Look at you. Look at us, the civic. Yeah, I'm telling you what.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we will invite you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very shortly. Well, that's going to do it for today's edition of Politically Georgia. If you found us on YouTube, welcome to our channel. And please click the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you love what you hear, the best way to support us is by subscribing to the AJC. Your subscription keeps the show on the air, and it hooks you up with full access to our reporting, exclusive newsletters, event invites, and article gifting for your friends. Start your subscription right now at ajc.com/start. We'll talk to you next time on Politically Georgia from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Thanks for listening to the Politically Georgia podcast. Our executive producer is Shane Backler. AJC's head of audio is Sam Stamler. Production support from our partners at Goat Rodeo, including Kara Schillen, Hazel Hoffman, and Max Johnston. For more of our political coverage, visit ajc.com/politicallygeorgia. And we invite you to support local journalism by subscribing to the AJC. Join us again next time on the Politically Georgia podcast from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.